Welcome to another edition of Sports 360 Champions Speak. This week's guest needs no introduction, a tennis coach par excellence. And that's not all, he's had the best of both worlds. When I say so, he's played with Ramesh, Krishnan and Vijay Amritraj, and he's also handled Mahesh, Bhupathi and Leander Paes in his prime. So he's got the best of both. And joining us this week on Champions Speak is tennis coach Nandan Bal all the way from Pune. Nandan, welcome to Champions Speak. Well, Nandan, let me start by asking, the fractured world of tennis, I would say, amidst this prolonged pandemic that we have seen, how do you see it bounce back, now that we are heading into US Open?
Well, I think I honestly don't know how big, the US Open without spectators, with limited spectators at the French Open. I honestly don't know how much that is going to work. Okay. But if you look at the Indian level, if you look at the national level here, and if you look at India, given the size of our country and there are hotspots everywhere for the virus, I just feel that we need to be a lot more localized in our tournaments. So there's no traveling involved. I mean, it can't be fun for somebody like a Rohan Bopana, who travels all the way from Bangalore to the US, which is even worse than India in terms of the virus hitting them. Okay. And then being quarantined and then coming out and trying to play your best tennis without any ambience of the, the crowds and, players don't just play for the money. They play for success. They play for the adrenaline flow that they get from the crowd. Okay. And if that's missed, I honestly don't know how successful it's going to be. It's just going to be a Grand Slam. And I mean, at the end of the day, what are you going to say 10 years from now? Say XYZ won a Grand Slam without spectators. Mm-hmm. It's just going to come on as, he won a Grand Slam. Okay. But I don't think, I think a lot of players actually play a lot better with crowd support, with the participation of the crowds and things like that. Mm-hmm. So it's not going to be easy. Okay.
Now looking at the WTA part of it, especially the women's part of the US Open, the way players have pulled out. Of the top 8, 6 have pulled out from playing the US Open. Do you see that to be a big dampener, or do you see that a window of opportunity was there for players to come out and play, and they are rather being cautious and rather being defensive?
I honestly feel that, for the players, sure, it's a Grand Slam, but at the end of the day, health is far more important. And so, though there is a window of opportunity because the top 6 have pulled out or whatever, first of all, when top 6 out of the 8 or 10 pull out, the charm of the whole tournament is a little, it's in a gray area. It's not there. And so, to tell you honestly, to win a Grand Slam without, without the top players playing, will probably lose a little bit of its sheen. It's something like what happened, I think, way back in '73 when Jan Kodis won Wimbledon and there was a players' boycott. Okay. And so, he ended up having the Wimbledon title, but to date, not too many people actually acknowledge the fact that he was a world champion. Okay. So somewhere I think that participation has to be there from everyone.
Okay. Now when you look at this particular window, this pandemic that came, and it clearly showed that there was a stark divide when it comes to this particular global game of tennis. But there are also new ways created to bridge this gap. Do you feel that's been successful?
I think a lot of this is still on the drawing board. Okay. I've actually been speaking to people who are now talking about, I think we are even talking about virtual reality tennis matches. I mean, it's come down to that you sit in your house and play a match against me sitting in my house. And so, and all of that is still on the drawing board. I know there are people working on that right now. Tennis is being discussed. I see tennis, discussions happening on Instagram and Twitter and, social media. And I just don't think that unless you're physically present on a tennis court, tennis is going to be played. Mm-hmm. And so somewhere we just need to wait for this to tide over, wait for this pandemic to go away. The pandemic, it's not going to stay for long.
How difficult is it for, an individual game like, say, tennis, badminton, players to adapt to playing inside empty stadiums?
Well, I guess, I mean, at the moment, it's not even a question of how they will adapt. It's a question of how quickly they will adapt, because
Okay.
they will have to adapt. You know, if you
Okay.
have no crowd, you're going to have to me, it actually, you sort of feed off the audience. You
Mhm.
feed off the crowd participation. And if that's not there, it actually becomes like a practice set or a practice session that you have at your center every day. And
Okay.
so but at some point, like I said, if you don't have a choice, you have to adapt. And I think in an individual sport, where in any case, you need to be focused 100% of the time. I mean, in a team game, there is, let's say football, there's one guy with the ball, but there's 10 others who have that maybe a few seconds of a break of focus or concentration. But in
Okay.
an individual sport like tennis, badminton, table tennis, whatever, you need to be there 100% focused on what is happening on the court. And so a lot of times, you don't, as much as the crowd is there and rooting for you, you actually don't hear a lot of it, because you're very focused and concentrated on what your job is, that is to play the match, to the best of your ability.
Nandan, you've been an ITF, level 3 coach. How difficult is it for, parents to be convinced to get their kids back onto the tennis courts now, considering the fear of this pandemic there? Do you see kids eager to come since, schools are closed, they need some kind of, breakaway where they can come out and, play some sport at least? Or do you feel parents are very guarded when it comes to even leaving their kids out to, academies to come out and play?
Yeah, so to give you a very, very clear example, which is actually hurting us right now or happening with us right now,
Okay.
we have more than 60 or 70 advanced players at
Okay.
one of our academies, and tennis has now officially opened in the state,
Okay.
and yet we don't have even 25 kids who have come out to play. And the
Okay.
simple and the simple reason is the kids are very eager to come out and play. The parents are very clear, sir, maybe 1 or 2 more months, let this die down a little more. We'll start after a month or two. So, that's very clear. We have like a 30-40% attendance where we normally have 100% attendance. And it's just
Okay.
simply because the parents are not eager as yet. The kids are.
Okay. What was the purpose? Was it more to stay healthy, or you had larger picture in mind that, you wanted to take up the sport pretty early? Because during those times, it's not so easy for kids to decide that you need to pick a game at the age of 10.
My father was in the LIC, Life
Okay.
Insurance Corporation, and he was posted out of Pune and
Okay.
at a non-family station.
Mhm.
And so the only chance I had of visiting him was during the summer holidays. And my passion right from the beginning of my life has been to eat well.
Okay.
And so, yeah, so the only thing that I did in the summer vacations was have a lot of mangoes.
Okay.
And at which point my dad said, listen, I go to the officers club. You need to get some exercise in. I play tennis, so why don't you come and learn some tennis? Or so just at least you won't put on weight. And that's how this whole journey has started.
Okay.
Seriously.
Okay. Now, that journey from starting off at 10 to becoming a, ITF level 3 coach, how has it been this journey? And, what are the, the memorable blocks as a player, as a coach? What are the memorable blocks that you would have that you could recount or share with our
Yeah.
audience?
So when I came back to Pune after the holidays, I continued with my tennis at Deccan Gymkhana in Pune, which is an iconic, very, very old club, almost 125 years old now, or thereabouts.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, I continued getting coaching in one of the regular schemes there. And that's where Dr. G.A. Ranade, who was a former AITA secretary, for some reason saw some potential in me.
Okay.
And he was the one who pushed my dad into saying that, look, this kid has potential, forget about studies, forget about everything else, let him play tennis.
Mm-hmm.
Now, which was amazing, because in the 70s, there was no money to be made in sport.
True.
And my dad was very clear. He said, look, I mean, he played tennis at a university level. My mom actually played badminton at the national level.
Okay.
And so there was sport in the family. But it was something, in those days, it was something that you did in the evening after your school and homework was over.
Okay.
Now, I think for my dad at that point to say that, look, you want to play tennis, but we are a middle class family, and if you don't do well in tennis, you don't have anything to backup from home to support you. And so if you're ready to take that chance, go ahead, do what you have to.
Okay.
Which I thought in the 70s was fantastic. I mean, I owe it to my parents to mention this, because not too many parents in those days, not too many parents today are ready to take that chance.
True.
And it's so much easier now. And so that's how that journey started.
Not many people remember you also got a silver medal in the 1982 Asian Games.
Yes, and in fact, if you go back even further back, in 1978, or was it 79, I also got the silver medal for individual sport at the World University Games in Mexico.
True.
And I think that was the first time that any Indian had won a medal there. So yes, that 1982 was an amazing experience. I mean, it was the first time that it was for us, it was the first time that it was in Delhi in 1982. And there was just an amazing spirit. It was almost like there was a new India. There was so much energy. Everybody was involved, right from the administrators to the players to the groundsmen. Everybody did it with zeal.
Okay.
And I think yes, I was happy I got the silver there.
Nandan, talking about the best of both worlds, when you played Davis Cup, you had Ramesh, Krishnan, Vijay, Amritraj to look up to. How was the experience sitting there on the bench and, getting to learn from these two stalwarts of the game?
It was amazing. I think I was in the team from 78 to about 85 or 86.
Okay.
And then there was earlier on, right at the beginning, there was Shashi Menon also, who also actually a childhood idol, because, he grew up in Pune and we shared the same coach.
Okay.
So he's always backed me. He's always helped me out. And that was great to be on the same team with him. And then, of course, later on, there was Ramesh and there was Vijay, Anand, and it was just amazing. I mean, these guys were world beaters. And so just to be there, to see how they think, to see kind of how they performed under pressure, for me, it was a huge learning experience, which actually, it helped me when I played on the tour. I mean, it really helped me on playing the tour, because, I would always know how to react to a certain situation, because I had seen a Vijay or a Ramesh do it in Davis Cup. And so it was amazing. It was really amazing.
Okay, who did you lean more towards, picking more things from Ramesh, since he used to play singles on the tour, or you lean towards Vijay? Vijay was more a double specialist then.
No, I think my game style suited Vijay's more, because Vijay was also a grass court player, essentially a serve volley player. And so for me to sort of look up to him was natural, because I had the exact same style of play. So Vijay was obviously the guy I looked up to. Ramesh has always been a very, very good friend, a close friend. And he was actually somebody who I hated playing against. Because I think it's the most frustrating thing to play Ramesh. He would never, ever give you a single point. You had to earn each one. And so, but we have stayed in touch, and we are still friends after 30, 40 years. It's been a great 40 years.
Okay. Now coming, from moving there, when you took over the role of a coach, managing or, mentoring Mahesh, Bhupathi, Leander, Paes, how easy was it? Or, was it fun to manage both of them at the top of or in their prime, both the players in the prime of their careers at the Davis Cup?
Yeah, I think as far as the stint at Davis Cup coach was concerned, I was there for a very long time, from I think early 2001 to almost 2013 was my last tie against New Zealand. So over a period of 12 or 13 years, we saw a lot of players come and go, but I think the mainstay of the team has always been Leander and Mahesh.
Okay.
And the one thing that you were guaranteed when the two of them were on the team was the fact that that one point on Saturday, the doubles point, was sure. I don't think I've seen those guys lose a match in Davis Cup. And so then it actually took the pressure off the singles players, because because they knew that they just had to win. Each one of them had to win just one out of the two matches they played. So to a large extent, in fact, a lot earlier when we actually started, Leander and Mahesh were playing singles and doubles.
True.
So, and so that really was difficult. I think a lot of questions that come up to me was about their personal relationships. And to be very honest and to be very fair to both of them, when it came to playing for the country, I don't think they ever brought those differences out on the tennis court or into the team meetings or just those 8 days or 10 days that we were together. Because both of them are incredibly passionate about not just playing, but winning for the country.
Since you mentioned both of them being passionate about playing, for the national flag, 2004, 2008, both times where, there was a lot of promise that they could get us an Olympic medal in tennis. Do you feel that what went wrong between the two, in both those attempts, they're pretty close, but they failed to cross that final hurdle?
Well, I mean, sometimes, Anil, how you play in a match is not the only criteria to winning a match.
Okay.
Because there are just days when your opponents just play better. And let's not forget that in Olympics, in Davis Cup, every country is putting their best players forward.
Okay.
And so you may be the number one team in the world, but at the end of the day, if somebody else puts in a better performance on that day, let's not forget that even the other teams during the Olympics are probably in the top 5 or top 8 in the world anyway.
Okay.
And so there is that factor, there is the luck factor, there is the factor of being on a surface that you're not very familiar with or comfortable with. So all these factors would probably contribute to something like that. But like I said, they wouldn't have lost because they didn't try. Okay. I can guarantee you 100% that they would have put their soul into it.
Okay. Now, as a coach, you tend to have your favorites. So amongst the two, if you had to pick, who would you go with, as somebody that you would bank on, amongst the two, it's just picking one of them, between Leander and Mahesh.
Are you trying to put me on a spot here now or what?
No, I'm not trying to put you on a spot. I'm just trying to know, what would you go with at the end of the day if you had to choose between the two?
Well, let's just say that Leander had a much better Davis Cup record. In fact, he's almost on the verge or has probably crossed the world record now. Okay. And so he's been a solid, he's been a solid factor in India's winning a lot of Davis Cup matches. But Mahesh played Davis Cup. He had injury issues and a whole lot of other things. But essentially, when he played, you could be guaranteed that he's going to put his 100% in.
Okay.
I think he's also a very good captain. I think he led the team very well too.
Okay. Now, considering, Leander still continuing with the game and still hoping, or believing that he could still have a realistic chance of playing the next season ahead. How would you see the longevity that Leander has had? What's the secret behind that?
His passion for the sport. For sport, not for tennis. I mean, I know he watches soccer, he watches other sports, plays incredibly good soccer. So it's just sport. He's all about sport. And so for him, to be involved in sport for such a long time is not even surprising. The other thing that has happened is he's kept himself remarkably fit. And, today's sport is about physical fitness. And that's something that he has kept remarkably well. Also, as he is, let's just say, aged, and he's pushing 45 or whatever now, I think what has happened is that he's learned how to take care of his body.
Okay.
In a manner which is befitting his age. Also, what has happened over the last 20 years, he's now got 20 years more of experience, of maturity in actually playing the game. So all that just leads to a incredibly dangerous combination, and I can still see him playing for as long as he wants. I mean, Martina Navratilova did it. Roger Federer is doing it. Leander is just one of those who's incredible hands at the net, which is what is required for doubles. He has those hands, and his knowledge of the game is fabulous.
Okay. Do you see Mahesh as a player, the experience that he gained, he brought more additions to that when he took over the role of a coach and the little time that he spent with the Indian Davis Cup squad?
I think for whatever time that Mahesh had, from what one saw on TV and from what one read, I think he backed his players to the hilt. And I think all the players who were on the team with him, I think supported him 100%. And when you have a team that is backing you 100% as a captain, I think it makes your job easier.
Okay.
You know, he was always there for the players. He stayed in touch with them right through the year. He kept track of what they were doing through the year. And so I think he gave them, that that experience that he had. He always was ready to share with them, even on tour, not just during Davis Cup. And I think that's what helped. You know, in tennis, I think the biggest, or any sport, communication is so important.
True.
And so when you're a good communicator, which I think both Leander and Mahesh are, I think the job is much easier. The players know exactly what is expected of them.
What do you feel is the issue that troubles today's players? You know, you have on one end a Leander who's 45 plus, still continuing and looking eager to play another 5 years on the circuit. But you know, when you look at the crowd or the fresh strength that we have, especially on our Davis Cup team, the players who are playing on the ATP and WTA tours, do you feel that what is the real issue that hampers Indian players, you know, who do well at the junior level, not able to take it to the senior level?
See, if you look at a guy like Leander, I think he played, I mean, when he first came on the scene and he was 16, 17, everybody said that he doesn't have the technique, he doesn't, you know, he's just a fit guy, and he's not a, you know, his technique is faulty and people are always going to expose those faults and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, I think people forgot that more than anything else, I think Leander has been a player who plays with his heart.
Okay.
Somebody who plays with a large heart and thinks big is going to overcome all those technical deficiencies, which is exactly what he has done. The longevity that he has, he still carries that large heart and the huge manner in which he thinks. He thinks big also, and that's what he carries on the tennis court today. I think a lot of the younger generation, 14, 15-year-old kids, are, I think, unfortunately not thinking that big. They are comfortable in a situation where they become a national champion or a junior national champion. They apply for a scholarship abroad, and the next thing you know is that 4 years later, XYZ, who was a junior national champion, had so much talent, is now sitting on Wall Street in New York. You know, that's much, you know, that's pretty much what they are. That's the extent of their thinking. And so I think somewhere they need to start thinking that they are capable of doing bigger things in tennis, and not just to go to America on a study or a sports scholarship. I think that, for me, frankly, is a huge cause for concern.
But what hampers Indian players, especially players like Somdev, Yuki, even for that matter, Ramesh, Ramkumar, Ramanathan and Prajnesh?
Yeah, I think, well, as far as Ram and Prajnesh are concerned, I think they're going about it the right way. I think this pandemic has actually hit them more than anybody else, because I would have thought that both of them, along with Sumit Nagal, I think we had a very good shot at having 3 people in the top 100 in the world.
Okay.
But if you look at, for example, I mean, to tell you honestly, you need to base your game on your fitness levels. So if you're a big guy playing a big game, you can get away with it.
Okay.
But if you're playing a big game and if you're not built for it, you are going to get hurt. So at the end of the day, it all boils down to your physical fitness, your physical strength, your bulk. All those things matter. And somewhere, if you're playing a big game but don't have the physique to match it, you are going to get hurt.
Okay.
You know, in some cases it could be right through their career, or in some cases it will, like, say, for example, Somdev, incredibly fit, but at the end of it, all that running and being defensive, I think, caught up with him. And I think, if I'm not wrong, he actually ended because he was struggling with an Achilles heel injury, which just didn't allow him to run anymore. And so that's why I said that the issue is not just the fitness, but how you adapt your game to your fitness.
Okay.
Now, Ramesh Krishnan, for example, knew his limitations and he based his game according to that.
Okay.
You know.
On the flip side, you also handled the Fed Cup twice, 96 to 98, and also in 2017. How was that experience?
The earlier one, 96, 98, I think women's tennis really hadn't come a long way in India then.
Okay.
And if I remember right, I'm not sure of the team, but I remember there was Nirupama, there was Manisha Malhotra, and I think these girls actually put up a spectacular show for the couple of times that we played. There was one time in Thailand when we played, no, in Japan, and there was Sai Lakshmi, there was I think Rushmi, there was Nirupama and Manisha. We actually beat Thailand in that one tie, which was incredible because they had some of the best players in the world. And we came, for the first time in the history of women's tennis in India, we came very close to actually qualifying for what we have done this year. We actually came very close to that. And we ended up actually losing on a game difference of 2 games to Japan. And Japan qualified and we came in second. So even though, like I said, I think someone like a Nirupama, for example, I think Niru was, she was fantastic, and she went all the way. She went up to play Grand Slams, played the Australian Open. So I think it's unfair to say that they were not great. They were good, but they just didn't have direction at that time. It was only later. Now, when I came into 2000, was it 16 or 17? Whatever.
17.
Yeah, so when I came in, I think we had a team which was full of professionals. I think if you looked at Ankita, if you look at Karman Tandi, they know exactly what they're looking for. They know exactly where they are headed, and they work that hard as the men, where I think our women were actually doing a lot better than what our men were doing. And I'm not talking about Leander and, I'm not talking about, say, Leander, Mahesh and Sania, but I'm talking about the next level players. I think the girls were doing really well. You had a bunch of players who were out there and who were knocking on the doors. Amongst them, I think you had Rutuja Bhosle, you had Prarthana Tombre, you had Karma, you had Ankita, and I think Ankita has been a fantastic flag bearer for Indian women's tennis over the past 5 years, especially after Sania has kind of retired. So that's the wrong word. Let's say not playing as much as she used to. So I think Ankita has been fantastic for women's tennis. She's a huge role model. She's hardworking, she's spirited, and she's struggling, but she's hanging in there.
How was it managing, Sania Mirza and that team there? You also handled, I believe, the 2010 Commonwealth Games. You were captain of the 2010 Commonwealth Games tennis team too then. How was the experience handling Sania Mirza in particular, especially in those 2 games?
I mean, it's any person's dream to work with players like that because they're so professional. They know exactly what they want. They know their routines. They know what's expected of them, and they perform every single time. So for me to be out there and for me to be being there as a coach, as a mentor, as a captain, whatever you call it, has actually been a breeze. Because when it came to performing for the country, Guangzhou, I think if I'm not wrong, along with Sania, we had I think Vishnu Vardhan, we had Karan Rastogi, we had Somdev who won the gold. We also I think had Sanam. So we ended up winning a lot of medals there. And it was a fantastic experience. So everybody came through so well. In fact, if I remember right, Karan Rastogi, who was not expected to do well, almost took out Dennis Istruman, who was at that time in the top 15. So, these memories are there. I mean, I may not remember names, all of them, but the memories are there forever.
But do recognition mean anything to Nandan Bal? Does that put more pressure on Nandan Bal, the coach?
No, it inspires me. To be very honest, to be recognized in society, to be recognized by your government, to be recognized by your peers, it doesn't put any pressure. It only inspires me. It helps me work even more. Even today, I spend about 6 to 8 hours on a tennis court because I'm certainly not giving up. I still have things to do. I still have players to produce, and I will continue doing that.
Okay, on that positive note, it's a lifetime achievement, but you've got many more goals to achieve in your life. It was a pleasure having you here, Nandan Bal, on Champion Speak. That's it in this edition of Champion Speak. We're going to be back again next week with another champion who's going to tell you his story. It's Simi.
Thank you.
Signing off. Bye-bye.